Hi again. I'd like to continue with our discussion of making this weather app thing. And in the last video, we made this class here called OpenWeather. And it has two properties. It's got city name and temperature. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to add a method. So I'm going to use the function declaration here and say get weather for, and I want to get weather for a city. So I'll say city, and that'll be a string. And so this function takes a parameter called city, which is type string. And this string hopefully will be the name of a city that you're looking for the weather, our code might do something like this. It would be like, go out and get the weather from the magical internet. Okay? And so, it would do this, and then it would call us back when it's done. Okay? And so for right now, we're gonna do this get weather thing in a little while. But for right now, why don't we just set this city name variable or property to the new city that we're passing in, right? So there's the city that came from outside the class, and now we've added it to the name here inside the class. Let's do a little test here to see if this is working, and we'll print a little message here. We'll say city name is city name, right? Okay. And now how do we call this function from outside? Well, back in View Controller here, we've got our instance of OpenWeather, and then I have this function here that creates the alert controller and handles the cancel and the OK button on the alert controller. And the OK button, it has a handler here, and the handler is a function. It doesn't look like those other functions, but essentially this is a function, and that function is called when you tap the OK button. Okay, and the little block here with this if statement is getting the text field in the alert box and getting the text from that text field. So why don't we do this? Why don't we put a little call right inside this if statement here? So when when your alert controller is okayed, when you tap the OK button, we'll say OpenWeather dot get weather for city, and then the city that we want to get the weather for is going to be, in this case, we'll get the text from the text field. So we'll say text field dot text. Okay? And I got some thing here, probably because this is an optional or something. Let's see there. Oh yeah, no, I forgot. I got to put self in there, right? So there we go, right? So I got to say self.openweather because OpenWeather belongs to our class, and so we have to. And since this is a closure, we have to specifically say like who owns this thing, right? So let's try it. Let's test here. And I'll wait for the simulator to start up. There we go. I'll wait for the app to start. And I'll tap on the button here, and I'll type a city name in here. I'll type in, how about San Jose, right? And I'll click OK, and then you can see the terminal opens here, and it says city name San Jose. So, we called on the function, and it passed our data into our class here. Okay? So that seems to be working pretty well. Now, the interaction between classes is kind of an interesting subject, and there's a few little tricky bits that are not obvious if you're just beginning at this. Okay, first of all, it's easy for the owner of a class to talk to the class. So from here, and I'm in View Controller right now, it's easy for View Controller to create an instance of a class and then say, set the properties of that class, or call a method of that class. And you can see I've done both of those things. So here in ViewDidLoad, I access the properties of the class, the city name and the temperature. And over here in the UI alert, I called a method of the class, getWeather for city, okay? And so that's pretty easy for this class to for view controller to do, because view controller owns this instance of OpenWeather. Now, the other way, going from inside OpenWeather to outside to find the owner, like whoever owns the particular instance of OpenWeather, is a different story, right? Because, in here there's no reference to the owner, right? So it's very difficult for this class to talk to, its owner object, okay, or its parent, or whoever, keeps track of it, right? So, I have a little trouble here, right? Like, how am I going to deal with that? Okay. Now, right now we have these methods, and let's talk about like why we would want to do that, right? Okay. Well, essentially, like this step right here, where it says "get out and get the weather." Okay. So, so what's going to happen here? Well, essentially, this step is going to be a few steps, right? It's going to be, send request to OpenWeather map, and then there's going to be this waiting, and it's going to be wait for reply, right? And then there's going to be a step when it's going to get the data, receive data, receive data from internet, and then we're going to have to deal with the data, right? We're going to have to, process it and then send it back, right? So maybe there's a, process data step. And then now we get to the step where we want to send the data back to whoever requested it, right? And at that step, we really don't have a reference to who made the request, right? Which was our view controller, right? There's no reference in here. So how do you deal with that? And there's a few things that you can do. I went to art school, so I just do this for fun. It's kind of a good hobby. And I enjoy the programming stuff, but I'm more into the design. But there's a few ideas here. So I'm not a computer science person. So just there's the disclosure there, right? So how do you deal with this? Well, one of the ways you can deal with it is called a protocol and a delegate. Okay, and so the way that works is we assign a delegate to this class. So we give it a variable here called delegate. Okay. And delegate is going to have a special type, okay? I'm going to leave this off for right now. I'm going to put a comment here. We're going to have to come back and set the type in a moment. But delegate is going to have a type. And the type is going to be an OpenWeather map delegate, or in other words, a class that conforms to a description that this class knows about, okay? So what does that mean, right? Well, essentially what I want to do is I want this class to be able to call a method in another class, and I want to guarantee that that class has that method, okay? And since we don't have a reference to that class, we're going to store a reference here in this variable, but we could store a reference to any class in that variable, and that class, and the class that we store might not have the method that we need to call on, in which case, our program would crash, right? So what we need to do is we need to guarantee that that other class has the method that we want, and then we have to store an instance of a class that conforms to that description in this variable, okay? So to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create what's called a protocol, okay? So here's my protocol here. So we start with the keyword protocol, and I put it outside the class definition there. So I'll say protocol here, and then I'll name it. So I'm going to name my protocol OpenWeather map. There we go. OpenWeather map delegate. Okay. Right. So anybody that implements this protocol, right, is going to have to conform to the description that we put inside the parentheses or inside the curly brackets, right? And then our delegate right here, you know, whenever we set the delegate for OpenWeather map, I'm going to put the colon here, and I'm going to set the type to OpenWeather map delegate, okay? And we'll make it an optional there because maybe we have a delegate, maybe we don't, right? It's an option, okay? So, so this delegate here, right? Like if we have a delegate, it better be an OpenWeather map delegate, okay? It better, you know, conform to the description here. So what do we want to do? I'm going to just do something simple. I'm going to say function and update weather, okay? And that's it, right? I'll put the parentheses there, and then we're good. Okay, so what does this say? Well, this says that you know, anybody that is conforming to the OpenWeather map delegate protocol, they must implement the function update weather. Okay, and inside the protocol right here, we define a function, but we don't put the function body here. Okay, because you can't define the function here because we don't know what it's going to be. We just know the name. You can't include any parameters. So if there was parameters that you want to include here, you can put them in here. Like you could put A and, you know, and you could say it's type int, and you could put B and say it's type string. You know, so we could say, okay, anybody that is an OpenWeather map delegate has to implement the function OpenWeather, you know, or update weather, and that function has to take two parameters, A and B. Okay. In our case, we won't use that. We'll just keep it super simple, right? So anybody that's an OpenWeather map delegate has to have an update weather function, okay? So, you know, why are we doing this again? Well, we want our class here, the OpenWeather map class, to be able to communicate with any instance or, you know, with any object that creates a class of OpenWeather map, which we've done here in View Controller. Right, so View Controller creates an instance of OpenWeather map, right? And what I want to do is I want to say, it's giving me an error now. Let's see. Oh, cannot be constructed because there's no initializers. I guess I got to have an initializer here. Let's add that, right? I don't know why it does that because it let me do it without, but I guess maybe if you have a delegate, you know what it is? It's this thing, right? Since I have a variable here and I haven't given it an initial value, then I have to have an initializer. Okay, so I'll add the initializer here. I forgot that's one of the rules in Swift. So I'll add an initializer here like this. Okay, so now I have an init, right? And hopefully that'll silence the error there. Oh, it looks like it went away. Thanks. Okay, so anyway, so I've got my OpenWeather map here, and what I want is I want this class to be a delegate for my OpenWeather map instance. Okay, so what I'm going to do is at the top here I've got View Controller : you know, UI View Controller, and then if I put a comma here, I can name a protocol that this class is going to conform to. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start typing OpenWeather map delegate, and then when I see it appear in the code hints, I'll hit return and it'll fill it in for me. And then as soon as I fill that in, it immediately gives me an error, and that's okay. I'm expecting this, right? Because essentially it's saying like, hey, you know, this view controller does not conform to protocol OpenWeather map delegate, right? Because, you know, essentially by adding this here, I'm saying that this class has agreed to implement the protocol that we defined in the OpenWeather map delegate, right? So you know, View Controller has to have the function update weather, right? So let's go back in here, and I guess when I was testing, I actually called it display weather, but I'm going to take that out, and maybe I'll put it right here. And I'll say, you know, function, maybe let me see if it'll code hint it for me. I'll type update weather. Oh yeah, look. So there it is right there, because you know, Xcode sees that we're using this delegate, so it says like, okay, you know what, I'll recognize the methods of that delegate, and so I can fill that in. So I'll just type update weather, and it fills in the rest for me. And there we go. So that's only really half the story. There's a little, that was the long half. There's a shorter half that goes with this, right? So now that we've got our delegate here, let's put a comment there. We'll say, open. Actually, let's do it this way too. We can do open weather map delegate methods, or method, right? Okay, so that'll remind us that this is the open weather map delegate method. Okay, so put a comment there. And so we got to do one more thing, right? When I go back here, the open weather map class now, if it wants to call on its delegate right here, then it'll know that delegate has to implement the stuff in the protocol, because that delegate is this type, right? It's an open weather map delegate. The one thing that's missing though is that delegate never got assigned a value, right? So delegate is a delegate is a property here of open weather map, just like city name and temperature. And so we can assign it a value from outside. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go up to view controller here. And when our view did load, when the view loads, what we're going to do, and maybe I'll even do this first, I'm going to say open weather, right? That's the name of my instance, right? That's the instance of the open weather map class, right? And I'm going to say open weather, you have a delegate property, right? And I'm going to set the value to self. So self is the instance of this class, view controller, right? So I'm assigning, a reference to our view controller to the delegate property of open weather, right? And then open weather says, okay, you know what? You've assigned a delegate to this. And so now, if somewhere in here, if we wanted to say, talk to our delegate, we can guarantee that our delegate implements the update weather method, right? So maybe I'll even just type that in here, right? So I'll say, okay, get weather for city, and maybe I'll take out this print city name here, right? And, delegate, update weather will call, like when you set the weather here for the city, right, and set the city name, then the delegate is going to, we're going to call on its update weather method, and our delegate can display the weather, right? So maybe I'll take this stuff out here, right? And what I'd like to do is I'd like to get the city name here in the update weather function, okay? So I'll do that here. I'll say city name label dot text equals delegate, open weather, sorry, dot city name, and then maybe I'll say temperature label dot text equals open weather dot temperature. Okay, so there we go. Let's give that a quick test, right? And then now I've got my default weather here of San Francisco, and if I, type in a new city name here, and I type in, like hello city, and I click OK, then what we did is we get the 77 and the hello, right? But the way that we get it this time is calling on the delegate and then getting the values from the delegate through the protocol, right? Where the delegate calls us back at open or update weather, right? Let's look at those side by side just for fun. I'm going to use the option key and click on open weather map here. And so you can see the two classes side by side here. This is my view controller, and then this is the open weather map class. And when we created an instance of open weather map right here, right, we declared ourselves as the open weather map delegate. So that means that we have to implement the functions here defined in the protocol, right, with the open weather map delegate protocol. And so we've done that here. This is, the update weather method, right? So we conform to this protocol now. And then in viewDidLoad, we set our OpenWeather map delegate, right? So here's the property here, and this property has to be set to an object that is OpenWeather map delegate, right? So this class here is an OpenWeather map delegate, so we're okay, right? And we set the delegate property to self, right? Which is us right here, right? And now when we call on OpenWeather map get weather for city, and we pass the city name, then we're talking to our object here, the instance of this class, right? And we pass the city name and we set the city name. And then now from inside this class, the delegate property, which has a reference to self, which is the view controller, calls the update weather method in the view controller, and we can guarantee that the delegate has this property because it conforms to the protocol. Right? I know it's a little confusing there, but go with it. Watch this again or repeat, go through this, make it for yourself, right? And I think you'll get it. It's kind of a little weird, but once you get the concept there, I think it starts to make a lot of sense, okay? But anyway, there we go.